Last time we discovered that the vision of the end of time for Moshe is a time when we will return to the land and learn to love. That love will be an achievement which will be the ultimate realization of what it means to be a human being. When Hashem actually intervenes to cut away from our hearts anything which is standing in the way, blocking us from the connection which is called love. And more profoundly, we discovered that this is actually a return to the tree of life. Because when Moshe says, you shall choose life in order that you should live, to love, to listen, and to be intimate. So he actually is describing the nature of life in its greatest intensity as being the power of love, which enables listening and intimacy. That's how I read that verse. So that now we've come through that vision to a first recognition that what we need to do is really get ourselves more in touch with our life force. And in being more in touch with our life force, we'll be able to get more in touch with our love force. And that's a very important recognition. You see, even though the verses which I quoted are talking about our relationship with God, love is a property which is both in our relationship with God and our relationship with other human beings. After all, the rabbis teach that the statement of Rabbi Akiva that the general rule, which everything else seems to revolve around in the Torah, is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that you should love your fellow as yourself. Oh, and let's not forget that the end of that verse is, I am Havaya, I am God, Ani Hashem. Someone once told me a funny story about how when they were in the States, they visited a synagogue where there was a epitaph on the entry over the top which said, love your neighbor as yourself. And the person who was from Israel turned to the rabbi there and he said, I mean, did you run out of room? He said, what do you mean? He said, well, I mean, that's not the end of the verse. The verse finishes with Ani Hashem, I am God. Because the properties that are involved with love have to do with the properties that we experience in ourselves when we experience the divine in ourselves. So that if we're talking about powers of life, we're talking about the divine enlivening. And if we're talking about the powers of love, which are the emotive reflection of those powers of life, the emotive expression, the realization or the experience of that life, then what we're talking about is in that love, we're experiencing God. And there seems to be an implication here that without some level of our connecting ourselves back to the divine source, it will be difficult to come to a full love relationship. And that is a given of Jewish Torah teaching, that it's the full realization of our being, which is what love is, and that full realization of our being has to do with our divine self. But I'm a little bit running ahead of myself here, and I'm just giving you a little bit of a precursor of things to come. But right now, the first lesson that we explored together, the actual properties of love, was last time when we uncovered how it has to do with life. So that vision of an end time, that vision of the final realization, is actually one picture. But in the prophet Isaiah, in Yeshayahu, there's a different picture. And that picture is that at the end of time, Mal'ah ha'aretz de'at Hashem kamaim layam mechasim, that the whole world will be filled with the knowledge, the awareness, the consciousness, whatever we're going to do with that word, of Hashem, in the same way that the waters fill the sea. Now, this is an interesting image because we're used to the sea being actually the place where the waters are, but in Hebrew, the yam is actually the seabed, and it's filled with water. This is a very evocative image of a world which is filled with knowledge, meaning that there's something which is, first of all, singular about that knowledge. It's like an ocean. Second, that it's a power which is, well, liquid, meaning that it seems to flow, perhaps suggesting a dynamism to it. And thirdly, and I think most importantly for us, it suffuses, it saturates the life that's here with it. In other words, that there is a awareness, a consciousness, which in a sense is everything on a certain level. And that's a very profound recognition about the nature of consciousness, awareness, openness to what is, and being in touch with it. But for us, rather than dwelling on that, I want to just ask kind of a Talmudic question. If Moshe says at the end of time it's going to be love, so then how is it that Isaiah says at the end of time it's going to be awareness? Okay? Well, I think it's obvious to all of us that love and awareness have to come together, right? I mean, if we're going to assume that these prophets are not speaking two different voices. And in fact, it's Maimonides, of all people, who has some of the most beautiful passages about love at the end of his Laws of Tshuva, in which he says that all the things I've taught you about God, the nature of God, and yourself, which he does also investigate in the Book of Knowledge, which ends with this passage at the end of the laws about tshuva, about returning to God. He says, obviously, the ultimate returning is a returning of love, but I've been giving you all of this information and de'ah, because ke godel ha-de'ah, kach godel ha-ahava. As great, as expansive, as profound is our knowing, such is the profundity of our love. They're so intertwined with one another that in making them inseparable, one cannot have a profound love without knowledge, nor, it seems, will one miss love if they enter the world of De'ah, which of course needs its own exploration, which we'll do shortly. But right now, what I'm just showing you is these visions of the end of time, when consciousness becomes that which all is suffused with, when there's a sense of connection with all things that is intimate and unified. So then that will be a world which will not just be filled with knowing, it will be filled with love. And before I get into the Torah sources, I just want to connect us to kind of what we know about ourselves. You know, I mean, think about what it would be to love someone who you don't know at all. I mean, generally that's called infatuation, right? I mean, basically you're getting excited by this person. The person is really an object for you of excitation. And then what's happening is you get more and more invigorated and alive, which, you know, that works with life and love, but it's all very self-involved. I mean, it can't be connecting to the other because you don't even know that person at all. You've only seen her or seen him. So in Hebrew, that's called lihit ahev, which actually means to love yourself. That's how you say in Hebrew infatuation. It's all inward turned. Now that kind of a inward turning is not really what we are speaking of when we're talking about ahava at all. Ahava is very outward turned, very inclusive, very involving of oneself with other. So it's obvious that it's going to require some kind of a knowing. I mean, there's going to be, of course, levels of knowing. It could be that a person senses something about that person. I know when I first met my wife, I knew, but I felt like I knew her. There was something very familiar. Now, obviously, I could have been fantasizing. Turned out I wasn't. But you know, sometimes we do get an intuition, a sense of who this person is. But that's a type of knowing. It's not something which needs to be transferred through verbal communication necessarily. You can get a very profound sense of who the person is that you're with by a look into their eyes, by a sense of their poise, by a feeling of their energy. But those are all modalities of knowing. But if it's none of those, if all you're doing is feeling yourself and some kind of an excitement that has nothing to do really with who that other person is or desiring to know them, you're barking up the wrong tree. So that's important for us, first of all, just to see in terms of our own experience. Well, this also gives us some profound guidance in terms of our own relationships with our in our marriage relationships or in relationships in general. If you want to access love, there's going to have to be some sort of an openness to knowing. So today, in terms of what I want to give over, is three implications of that. One is obviously going to be about communication, right? I mean, you have to be able to commune with the person by being able to transfer information and knowledge or ideas or hopes or dreams or aspirations, etc., etc. So there needs to be some kind of communication. And again, that communication, I mean, it's best, I think, as human beings, that it also involves words. But it could definitely be music, singing, movement, many other ways in which we communicate with each other and get to know each other on various levels of our reality, right? But there's also something else which is very elemental here. And that is I need to be able to shed my preconceptions in order to be able to come to love. I need to be able to move away things that are covering over my heart in a way which might block my ability to experience the other, to really hear the other, to discover that person in their specialness, in their uniqueness, in who they are. So they cease being a projection of what I want or think or assume or hope for or all kinds of things, and can just get clean in order to come in touch with. So the practice I want to introduce today is a very simple and basic meditation practice of that kind of moving away from preconception. And during that meditation, I'll also invite you to bring up something you think about the person who you are in a love relationship with or in the beginning of a relationship with or whatever, to utilize this meditative practice to kind of like shed preconceptions and begin anew in coming to know the person you're coming to love. Now, let's just take our time in the meditation to let go and to begin to make ourselves available to the dei'ah, which leads to love. In this meditation, we're going to open ourselves up to new possibilities of knowing by simply quieting ourselves into the non-knowing, simple consciousness, which is our profound center, which becomes available to us as we quiet. Let's take some moments to settle down here into our makom, sensing the pressure of the chair against us and our own weight on it. Noticing our feet comfortably sitting on the ground and the ground's support of them. Letting our hands rest comfortably on our thighs or alongside our body. Allowing our back to straighten comfortably and gently, and our head to tip slightly upward. Enjoy a pleasant, deep breath coming in through your nose. Let your whole body stretch together with that in-breath. And now slowly release it. Take another nice deep breath, allowing your insides to fully receive the nourishment that comes from your breathing. Feeling the life force invigorated by the breath in Feel the fingers almost tingling with the new life force, all the way down to the end of your toes. And now release again with a pleasurable sense of calm. We're going to simply practice letting go of thoughts which belong to the world of da'at and opening ourselves up to de'ah, simple aware consciousness, a knowing deeper than opinionating, which is da'at. And so, take another nice deep breath and let go of the information I just gave you. And allow your attention to rest on the breath that comes in and out, and the sounds of the music that accompanies this meditation. Any thoughts that arise in your mind, notice, and then with your next exhalation, simply exhale them out. Keep practicing that as you tend to the thoughts that come up. Notice them, and when you do, simply exhale them out. Follow this for the next few minutes. And now, bring up the image of someone with whom you have a positive relationship, one that matters to you. You might say their name, conjure up their image, simply sense their presence. And open up your heart to love and care towards this person. Perhaps even sending a ray of loving light towards the image you've brought up. And now, bring up an opinion you have which stands in the way of fully connecting to this person. A da'at that you've developed. It may be true, may not be true. We're simply going to allow ourselves to gain some distance and move from da'at to de'ah as we become simply aware rather than confined by the particular view we've taken. So bring up that opinion you've developed. Yeah, notice it as a thought. And as with the other thoughts that you practice this with, just breathe it out now. And then come back to your inner serenity and silence. Do that again. Bring up that same opinion. Again, observe it. And breathe it out like you would any other thought. And return to the simple silence and connection to this person who you have brought into your awareness. Just be now again in the simple connecting to that person in this serenity and quiet. And now return your energy inside you as the image of the person whom you've been connecting to is let go of. Go back to simple attention to your breath. And the pressure of your body on the chair. The comfort of your feet on the ground. The music playing in your ears. And slowly open your eyes to the world around you with a stance of simple daya, simple awareness of what is.